welcome in onto the field in New Orleans in the Superdome. My name is Brandon Adams, and this is our Kroger Kickoff. As Georgia gets ready to take on Texas in the Sugar Bowl in just a couple of minutes on the field behind me, we will see Georgia walk onto it for the first time here as it prepares to take on the Longhorns. And the eyes of the nation will certainly be paying very close attention to what happens between Georgia and Texas here tonight. Welcome into the program. While we wait on the dogs to arrive, we'll certainly have plenty of time to take your comments on your thoughts about exactly what is expected from Dog Nation for these Georgia Bulldogs here this evening. We certainly wish you a Happy New Year wherever you may be joining us here. We wish you could be with us in New Orleans, but nonetheless, we'll do our part to bring you the sights and sounds. One of the things I think is going to be really interesting here as Georgia plays on New Year's night with really the national college football stage all to itself. Texas in a spot like this for the first time, haven't been in a major bowl since 2009, haven't won one since 1994. This is obviously kind of a rare stage for them to be on. That probably builds the national anticipation for the game. Then there's also Georgia's spot here in the national conversation over the last couple of days. As many of you are aware, and many Georgia fans feel just as strongly about, there was a lot of disappointment about the way that the two national semifinal games played out on Saturday. Notre Dame did not look the part of a college football playoff team. Oklahoma, at least in terms of the overall outcome and the key stages of the early portion of that game against Alabama, also did not truly look the part of a college football playoff team. Georgia fans believe they belong, and to a certain extent, the results of the bowl season thus far would seem to validate that. We saw Kentucky today in a high-profile bowl game beat Penn State, one of the powers in the Big Ten. That's a team that Georgia beat on the road handily in the month of November. We saw Florida in the Peach Bowl handily take care of Michigan, a team at one point in time that was in the college football playoff conversation. Florida wins that game easily. Michigan was missing some of its key players, but that was an easy, impressive win for the Florida Gators. That's also an easy win that Georgia got away from home towards the end of October. So Georgia's case of being one of the four best teams, at least based on some of the performances this bowl season, would seem to be amplified. But the true case is made by Georgia's own performance, how it plays tonight against the Texas Longhorns. And based on some of the backlash from national media members and other college football fans outside the bubble of Dog Nation, there is certainly some who maybe wouldn't mind seeing Georgia taken down a peg, diminished, certainly from an ego standpoint, after a lot of Georgia players were feeling very good about their own resume and their own chances, given the fact that Notre Dame and Oklahoma did not exactly play well. So that's obviously going to be a big thing to pay close attention to. And then there's the other thought here of some Georgia players who could be playing their final game in a Georgia uniform. As you are well aware, for Justin Fields, the quarterback who put himself into the transfer portal and could, shortly after this game, announce that he's indeed going to go play at another institution for the rest of his college career. A lot of eyes will be on him tonight. Will he play in this game? Will Georgia use him much the same way it has all season long? Is that the way all of that's going to go? Jim Chaney, the offensive coordinator, has said it'll be business as usual, but is that indeed going to be the case? Certainly a lot of Georgia fans are paying close attention to that. Then there's also the issue when it comes to some of the juniors who could make the decision to go on in the NFL. Elijah Holyfield, wide receiver Riley Ridley, tight end Isaac Nada, safety J.R. Reed. There are a number of Georgia players. Who certainly are going to have their chance to make that decision. That'll be a big topic of conversation in the locker room once this game is over, and obviously we'll be paying close attention to that. Speaking of after the game, of course, we'll have Northside Hospital post-game coverage coming for you over the course of the tonight and tomorrow morning. We'll extend some of that into the morning, just given the fact that it's going to be an awful late night for some of you. So you'll see the post-game show tonight after the game, courtesy of Northside Hospital, and then some of our Northside Hospital post-game coverage tomorrow will also continue as a part of Dog Nation Daily as we broadcast one more time live from New Orleans. But that's all what's to come. For now, it's our Kroger Kickoff. We appreciate Kroger being a big part of the Dog Nation pregame all season long. And, of course, for many of you, I know when you had your big New Year's party last night, you stocked up with all those items from Kroger. You may have even checked out Kroger Ship. A great resolution to start off your new year is to make grocery shopping more convenient. Kroger Ship certainly gives you a chance to do that. And for those of you settling in tonight with a big-time game-watching party there in your neighborhood, thanks for inviting us to be a part of it. We certainly appreciate you inviting Kroger to supply the food and beverages and everything else. We're just a couple of minutes away from seeing Georgia come onto the field here in the Superdome in New Orleans. Then after that, we'll be ready for kickoff between Georgia and Texas in the Sugar Bowl. While we're waiting on the dogs to arrive on the field, let me take a moment to pull up a couple of our comments in our Facebook comment section, give you a chance, and our YouTube comment section as well, give you a chance to react to everything going on as we lead into the Sugar Bowl. As I pull these up, I will mention that I know that many of you, I know that many of you are certainly curious about the fan breakdown in this game. Is it going to be more Texas fans than Georgia fans? So far in New Orleans, at least the best of what I can see, there have been more burnt orange and white probably than red and black. Some Georgia fans may be arriving late here for the game. So the overall split in the stands, we should be able to tell that by the crowd noise that's there. But at least in terms of walking around New Orleans over the last couple of days, you've probably seen a few more Texas fans, you've seen Georgia fans, and that may not be that big of a surprise just given the fact that Texas, as we mentioned a moment ago, is back in a major bowl for the first time in a long time. And for Georgia, many Dog fans were already in New Orleans just a few weeks ago when Georgia came to the state of Louisiana to take on LSU. So let me pull up a few of our other comment sections and we'll kind of get going here. Alan Verbanchik says, could someone please speed up my clock? I know that was hearing from my brother a little earlier, talking about the fact that we're still a long way away from game time, and there on the East Coast where many of you live, it's starting to get pretty late. So it's a little unusual to see Georgia playing a game this late on a weeknight, but hope you'll put on that pot of coffee and get ready to settle in and enjoy some good football with us, because I know for many of you living in the state of Georgia, watching this game from the state of Georgia, you're much like Alan saying, woo, it's pretty late for a college football game. Nakia Hester says he's got 42-7 in this game. That's his pick for Georgia against Texas. And obviously, if Georgia could come out and make a statement like that, Georgia 2-touchdown favorite, covering that number with ease, I do think that would give Georgia momentum going into the 2019 season. I love what Mike Griffith has said about this in Dog Nation Daily. Of course, you know Mike from his coverage at DogNation.com. On Dog Nation Daily a couple of weeks ago, one of the things that Mike said is that he really thinks that the Sugar Bowl here on the first calendar day of 2019 is not so much the end of the 2018 season as much as it could be the start of the 2019 season. That game that will usher in a new conversation for Georgia, one in which I think in 2019 the program wants to leave no doubt. It wants to not put the decision of whether or not it belongs to the college football playoff in the hands of the selection committee. It wants to make its own emphatic statement that you cannot leave Georgia out of that playoff. And obviously a big step towards doing that would be how it performs against Texas. The last time Georgia played in Louisiana for the Sugar Bowl, you may remember it blew out Hawaii, and on the heels of that was a preseason number one to start the 2008 season. Now, I don't believe that Georgia's likely to be a preseason number one next year, and we also remember that in 2008, despite the fact that it started on a lofty perch, that's not exactly the way the 2008 season ended for Georgia. But nonetheless, that is a track record of some evidence that suggests a lot can be gained from the Dogs going out and having a big performance here against the Texas team. And I was really struck by when Longhorns coach Tom Herman met with the media yesterday. I was really struck by how candid he was about what was at stake for his program in this game, referencing the fact that they get the win last year in the Texas Bowl against Missouri. You saw Herman and some of the Longhorns players do a lot of celebrating. To a lot of folks, that may not have seemed like a big bowl win, but for Texas, it had been a while since they'd won a bowl game. And obviously for Herman, a young, new coach, similar at least to Kirby Smart, although resume is at least slightly different. But for a young coach like Herman, he wanted to prove that he was building something there in Austin. Wanted to, much like Kirby Smart's always looking to generate as much investment of the program as he can get from a financial standpoint, Herman's trying to do those same kinds of things. A great way to get donors to loosen their wallet and their purse strings is to go out and beat a team like Georgia tonight. And that's one of the reasons why I think we know that Texas is going to give Georgia its best shot. And I would guess the Bulldogs are doing the same thing here. You are watching our Kroger Kickoff. We are live on the field in the Superdome in New Orleans, getting ready for Georgia to make its way onto the field. In just a couple of minutes, right behind me, to my left, you're going to see Georgia enter the stadium. Then the Bulldogs players are going to walk directly across and head to their locker room immediately on the other side of the field. When we have seen Georgia do this all season long, we, for the most part, have always seen Kirby Smart leading the way. Georgia quarterback Jake Fromm is never too far behind. Isaac Nana, the tight end, one of those guys that's also contemplating an NFL future. He's generally up near the front there as well. So it'll be interesting to see if the team does take that same almost single file type progression towards the locker room here. Do they spread out and kind of take in the turf and look up and appreciate the stadium they're in? Of course, they're a little bit more used to the Superdome by now. They've practiced here a couple of times. They're not seeing this stadium for the first time. but certainly they'll be seeing it with some crowd already starting to form here. I see some Georgia fans directly on the other side of me here, so they'll kind of soak all that up. We'll get a chance to see that with them, and obviously body language experts will probably be watching Justin Fields closely to see if he tips his hand one way or another about how he's feeling about what could be his last game in a Georgia uniform, and for many of those other Georgia players, much the same way. Let me go back and get some more comments here while we're waiting on Georgia players to arrive. As I'm pulling those up, I'll make mention, I hope you saw Connor Riley's piece at DogNation.com earlier today with a reference to some of the things that were said on ESPN this morning about DeAndre Baker not playing in the Sugar Bowl. Interesting to see how the Baker story here has almost become, of all the draft-eligible players not playing in bowl games, Baker was seemingly the one that got the most attention from the ESPN folks today because of the fact that he is with Georgia here in New Orleans despite not playing in the game. Kirk Herbstreit, some others in ESPN seem to take umbrage with that. It was an interesting opinion from Herbstreit. I really haven't heard from any Georgia fan that's dissatisfied with Baker being here. I think most Georgia fans feel Baker's done his job for Georgia. Now, admittedly, selfishly, they'd love the idea of Baker manning that spot in the secondary the way that he has for the last couple of seasons. But I really haven't heard anyone begrudge Baker for not being in this game, just given what's at stake for him and his future. But it was a topic with ESPN this morning as they broadcast College Game Day, leading into the day's worth of bowls. Dustin Williams says it's actually a good thing that Baker's not playing. Campbell needs the reps. And, Dustin, I kind of agree with you on that. I do think that Tyson Campbell is one of the more interesting figures to watch in tonight's game. I think that we saw Campbell be good enough during the summer to earn that starting spot. And yet over the course of the year, let's face it, Campbell had a couple of rough moments. A couple of moments where he did appear to be a bit of a freshman. So much so that at one point during the season, he was replaced with Eric Stokes. Stokes comes in the Auburn game, kind of holds that starting spot the rest of the way. And I think the reviews on Stokes as a starting cornerback for Georgia were pretty sterling. He made some big-time plays in pass coverage while given the opportunity to do that. And yet Campbell has been on the field a lot. He's gotten a lot of experience. I don't think anything's changed with him as a truly elite prospect, a guy that one day at the cornerback position for Georgia could be thought of every bit as favorably as DeAndre Baker's thought about right now. And tonight against Texas in the Sugar Bowl, especially given the Longhorn strength, probably its number one strength as a team, as a position group, is probably those wide receivers. Seeing what Tyson Campbell has learned over the course of this year, seeing how he's grown and developed, seeing the maturity that he's taken hold of here over the course of this season, both on the field and now getting a chance to watch, that could be a really fun thing to see, and it could be really, really interesting. If you do want to start looking ahead to the chances that Georgia wins a national championship in 2019, let's face it, we're all, I think, a little interested in those kinds of things as soon as the one season ends, or at least around here at Dog Nation, we're already kind of looking ahead a little bit. Well, if you're one of those people that's already thinking, what are the realistic chances that Georgia does win a national championship in 2019? I do believe that Tyson Campbell is one of those names in your program that you probably circle. That's one of those guys you put a little star next to his name and say, if he emerges, if he takes the next step, that's going to be a big deal because we have seen truly elite secondaries be one of the main facets of national championship contenders. And Georgia's well on its way to building that, both with what it already has on its roster, what it has already put together for the class of 2019, and what it still may do. By the way, Jeff Sintel's been providing great recruiting coverage from Orlando and on its way to San Antonio, where Georgia could still add a couple pretty impressive defensive back names for the class of 2019, and that will go a long way towards determining is Georgia truly a national championship contender. Let me take a few more comments here. Andrew Howell on the subject of juniors that could leave says Hardman should return, not is NFL ready. So those are that's Andrew's opinion on a couple of the players who will face that decision. And, if you're McCole Hardman, you say, well, he needs that next year to develop his skills even more. And I would imagine with another year in a Georgia uniform, he probably would do that. Let's also remember, though, that the NFL would certainly view his return skills as a favorable thing. That's one of the reasons why he'd get some extra attention from draft scouts because of that. And realistically, although I would certainly admit that I'd love to see Hardman return to Georgia next season, you have to wonder, even with growth and development, could Hardman move himself from where he is right now into, a higher classification of draft pick, let's say a first-round pick? If he doesn't think that he can do that, then that might be more motivation to want to leave right now. It's at least something worth considering, but I certainly agree that both Nada and Hardman are two players that will have some things to think about once this season's done. Shabazz Ali says, watch out for the onside kick tonight. That's Shabazz's prediction that Tom Herman may have a little chicanery up his sleeve. We'll see about that. David Eberhardt says Dogs will win this game 31-17. That's pretty well right in line with where the Vegas folks have been. Are we still at about a 13-point number? All right, so it's kind of down 12.5 most places. Really, the last couple days, you would see it 12.5 some places. And there's a little bit of a difference between 12.5 and 13, just given, how key of a score these three numbers are. There's a little bit of a difference there. So it sounds like the number's fallen a little bit, but still Georgia, a solid 2-touchdown favorite here. Brian Bain says that Isaac Nada has the perfect size for a tight end in the NFL. I kind of agree with Brian on that. And I wrote about this a couple of months ago at DogNation.com, that if you look at the stat, websites that cover the NFL, if you look at the guys in the NFL at the tight end position who are getting the most catches, one of the things you see a lot of is guys who get a lot of catches in the NFL did not necessarily get a lot of catches in college. It's pretty common to see a guy at the tight end position use more in the NFL than he is in college. I think that Nada could be one of those guys. Although I think we'd also say that the way that Nada's been used in the late stage of this season, he's certainly been a bigger part of the offense than he was at the beginning of the year. I think for a lot of Georgia fans, they like that. If Nada returns next season, they hope to see more of that from him in 2019. And if it's Charlie Werner in that role, once again, Werner, who's certainly flashed some brilliance himself, they hope to see a lot more of that too. By the way, it's our Kroger kickoff here. We're waiting on Georgia to arrive in the Sugar Bowl in just a moment. I'm hearing the Red Coat Band starting to fire up and play just a little bit. When the Dogs come in, they're expected to come in right here to my left, and they'll walk across the field. When we see them on the field, I'll, of course, step out of the way and give you a chance to see them, and we'll do our part to make way too much of the order in which they walk and the clothes that they're wearing and everything else. That's just kind of part of the fun, I guess. So we'll do that as part of our Kroger kickoff tonight. We appreciate you being with us. And, of course, we get a lot more coming up as some Dog fans in the stadium here. Say hello to everybody. Good to see everybody here tonight for this game. Georgia fans have been in a great mood this week. I talked about this, I think it was one of our shows yesterday, that the closer you get to game time and the closer you get to the stadium, to be around New Orleans, I do think you get the appreciation from a lot of UGA fans that, hey, this game's still pretty fun, and it's still a pretty big deal to be back in major bowls again. It's New Year's night, huge TV ratings, a lot of folks paying very close attention to what's going to go on there. There are a lot of UGA fans who I think really appreciate the spectacle that the Sugar Bowl can be and Georgia's role in that. We'll all admit, and we'll say it over and over again, that obviously this is not the game that Georgia would have preferred to be in. They would have much rather been in the Orange or Cotton Bowl this year, but as they say, it is what it is, and as consolation prizes go, this one is not quite so bad. So it's been a lot of fun to be a part of that. I was lucky enough a couple of minutes ago, got a chance to see the legendary former coach Vince Dooley walk into the stadium, and my gosh, you can't think about Dooley's career without thinking about that run of 3 consecutive Sugar Bowls he had to begin the decade of the 80s. And for a guy that won 6 SEC championships over the course of his Georgia career, he became in many ways synonymous with this stadium and with this game. I grew up hearing that axiom all the time about how you can't spell sugar without UGA, and Coach Dooley was one of the guys that made that something that Georgia fans love saying to each other. And, of course, tonight, Georgia back here again. I know that Coach Dooley would love to see nothing more than Georgia go out and get a big win against the Texas Longhorns. Kelly Joyce Sr. says, any chance that Baker has a change of heart and plays tonight? I guess he would be, presumably eligible to play, but at this point in time, I'm guessing we don't see any kind of surprise entrance for DeAndre Baker into that game. We were mentioning tight ends earlier. Andrew Howell says, Charlie Werner's a stud. Been waiting his turn. We won't miss a beat with him next year. And if Nod is gone, it sounds like Andrew's pretty confident about what we'll see there. And that certainly should be an interesting thing to see. James Ferris says, go Dogs, checking in from Titusville, Florida, down there near the Space Coast. We appreciate that. Irma McCoggle checking in from Valdosta. Of course, a lot of great Georgia players coming from Valdosta. That'll be interesting to certainly appreciate you checking in from Valdosta. Nick Lurch says, any injury updates? A couple of the injuries we have been paying attention to is what's been going on with Jordan Davis. Kirby Smart did talk about that yesterday. Obviously, a little bit of a mixed review for Davis, who has certainly seemingly had some back issues that he's been dealing with. My guess is we see no James Cook tonight. But there are obviously a couple of injuries that you're paying close attention to there when it comes to the situation with the Dogs. Brad Harris checking in from Corbin, Kentucky. Brad, we appreciate that. Barry and Mary Hudson German says, let's go Dogs. Show them. All right, here come the Bulldogs coming into the stadium here. Let me step away. Georgia coach Kirby Smart is going to walk in. These Georgia coaches and players are going to walk right by us. And the order of entrance so far very similar to what it's been all season long. You see Georgia coach Kirby Smart leading the way there, flanked on both sides by Georgia State Patrol officers. And shortly behind him, a guy that has emerged as the team leader for the Bulldogs, a permanent captain for the 2018 season. Georgia quarterback Jake Fromm. Then after that, you see Justin Fields walking in, headset on, no way to tell from the look on his face what he might be thinking. Isaac Nada, Charlie Warner coming in as well. You see a huge ovation now as the fans behind me realize what's going on. Terry Gowan always among the best dressed once again. Lamont Gilliard there with him. You see Isaiah Wilson walking in, Andrew Thomas, the two big Georgia tackles. They're side by side. Rodrigo Blankenship coming in now. Georgia is walking in a very different kind of dog walk. No fanfare on the outside of the stadium. The weather hasn't been great here in New Orleans the last couple of days. You see Jonathan Ledbetter, shades on, looking good. A lot of energy from Ledbetter as he walks by. A little different kind of dog walk here today, but Georgia is making its way into the stadium. The fans now on the other side of the stadium getting a glimpse of UGA for the first time as we see Cade Mays come walking by here. Mays is the guy that Georgia fans are looking forward to seeing more of on the field very soon. J.J. Holloman now walking by. Trey Blunt. Trey Hill coming by. You see John Fitzpatrick, one of the tight ends. Georgia continues to stroll in here, getting ready for the Sugar Bowl against Texas. Obviously a great week for these Georgia players, and it can be easy to forget that, 100 years ago, or seemingly 100 years ago, the purpose of bowl games was a reward for a good season. Georgia no doubt has had a very good season, and no doubt they have had a great time this week. If you've been in New Orleans, you've probably seen some of the Georgia players and staffers out and about as players continue to file in. Adam Anderson, one of the final Georgia players to make his way in here tonight. But obviously for Georgia, they have gotten a chance to live it up in New Orleans and really enjoyed this moment. For many of these guys, they've been treated with the red carpet treatment, and for some of them, they're making their first ever bowl appearance. For others, they've been lucky enough to play in bowls of this caliber for 2 consecutive years. So an incredible scene, an incredible atmosphere, smiles all around as the Georgia players, some seniors know this will be the final time they wear the red and black. Some underclassmen know it's a chance for them to go out and make another name for themselves, either impress those NFL draft scouts. If you're a junior, maybe you move on to the NFL, or for young players to lay the foundation for what could be more playing time in 2019. And that one more final reminder, as so many of our commenters have said, to let the world of college football know that, yes, Georgia truly was here in 2019 one of the 4 best teams in the country. And the only way to prove that is to go out and emphatically take care of the Texas Longhorns here this evening. Thanks for being a part of this edition of our Kroger Kickoff. We'll have more Kroger Kickoff coverage here and coming up in just a couple of minutes live from the field here. Try to bring you some of the Georgia warm-ups. So keep close to the Dog Nation video channels here. Get settled in for a very happy new year, a terrific night of college football. Thanks for being a part of the Kroger Kickoff. We'll see you back here from the field coming up in just a couple of minutes.